Hello and a very warm welcome to this 261 Fearless Empowerment Talk. I'm Juliet McGrattan, hosting today on behalf of 261 Fearless, a global network which uses running to unite, empower and improve the health and well-being of women all around the world. Now, we believe that education is key to empowerment, and we use our series of empowerment talks to inform, motivate and inspire. The talks feature high-profile, influential women in business, sport, leadership roles, and today is no exception. I'm delighted to introduce Diane Watson. She's joining us from Leeds in the north of England. Diane is a financial planner and principal partner at Sovereign Wealth. She's also the founder of She Can Prosper, a network that supports women and helps them to feel informed and confident in making financial decisions and securing their futures. I'm really looking forward to discussing our topic today of empowerment through financial planning. So thank you very much for joining us, Diane.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Good morning, Juliet.
Good morning. Yes, indeed. I'd like to start, Diane, if it's okay, by just asking you a little bit about yourself. And I'm wondering who inspired and motivated you growing up? Who were your role models?
I think that's a really easy question to answer. I have a mother who is still alive, and she was the eldest of 9 children, born into a very, very impoverished life in Liverpool, and believed that education was the way out of poverty. So when I was a small child, she went back to night school and did her A-levels, which back in the 60s, was a really brave thing to do. She then went to teacher training college, and she drove 60 miles a day and became a qualified teacher and then eventually a head teacher. And she was a very strong, confident woman who made me feel empowered that you need to make your own decisions in life, really, and be responsible for yourself. So I guess she is my greatest role model, actually, Juliet.
She sounds amazing. What a great inspiration for you growing up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we at 261 Fearless, obviously, we're all about moving our bodies and using running to empower women. Has physical activity played a role in your life? How does it help you?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I was thinking before I came on the talk about obviously my childhood with my mother, and I was very physically active as a child. We ran everywhere. I had a bike. We were out all day walking. And then obviously as time went on, I became a mum, and the lack of I did less exercise, let's put it that way. But I found the gym when my children were quite small. So I've been a gym buddy for most of my adult life. However, during lockdown, where gyms have been closed, I've rediscovered my love of walking, and I walk every single day. I get up at 7 a.m. I've seen the most amazing sunrises actually during the last few weeks. And it's really, really helped improve my mood because I live alone. So I've been quite isolated during lockdown, and I've absolutely fallen in love with walking. And so much so that I've signed up to do the Yorkshire Three Peaks Challenge in June next year. So it's really helped me.
Oh, that's fantastic. And it's wonderful to hear, good things coming from our time of lockdown, which has been a difficult time, obviously.
Absolutely.
And just thinking about your career, just tell us a little bit about your journey. Have you always worked in the financial world?
So I think like a lot of people, I kind of fell into the financial world. I did an English degree. I had no idea what I wanted to be when I left university. And I spent 4 years of my early career working in the press office of a very large company, and then transitioned. And after my children, wanted to find a career that would really fit in with them, because I was away a lot. I was spending a lot of time in hotels, away from home. And so I became a financial advisor in 1994. I set up my own business. I'd always been interested in finance. I took all my exams, and I decided for me that being self-employed, running my own business was the better option, because it would give me more control over how I balanced my work-life balance with the children.
I think that's really important, isn't it? And quite often our career paths do chop and change and divert around our families as well. My impression is that the financial world is very male dominated. I mean, do correct me if I'm wrong. Is that true?
It is very male dominated. I mean, I work in an organisation that is still very, very male orientated. We have 50 principal partners in the organisation that I belong to, and only 5 of them are women. So, and throughout my career, I've found that being successful as a woman has actually been quite difficult. A lot of men are not very comfortable with that. You know, they're not comfortable with the fact that a woman's done better than them. I also have to say that some of the women haven't been either. So I feel in many ways, you know, it's been a hard journey actually. And if I go to an event, you know, the room will just be full of men. You know, I'll be scanning the room looking for a woman to go and sit with. So it's been quite lonely actually. But obviously that's compensated by spending time with really lovely people who I help, who I advise, who obviously are men and women. But yeah, it is still a very male dominated profession.
What would you say your biggest challenge has been, and how have you overcome that?
I think credibility. I joined the organisation that I'm with now in 1999, and there were hardly any women at all. And I set my stall out that I wanted to become a principal partner. I wanted to be as successful as I could be. And back in those days, you know, I really was, you know, in Leeds where I worked, I think there were 2 other women. You know, I mean, there are more now. So I think, you know, proving yourself and maybe feeling that you have to prove yourself more. You know, going to things where it's very blokey. You know, it's not very women friendly. And back in the 90s, people not really thinking about diversity in the way they have to now, actually. You know,
that must have been even more of a challenge with having a young family at the same time as well.
Well, yes, also, you know, that too, because obviously, you know, men don't have the same, or didn't in those days anyway, the same kind of child responsibility. So I was running a home, you know, doing the shopping, no online shopping back then, fitting in an early morning trip to the gym, running a business and being responsible for making sure that the kids' uniforms were, you know, out every day. So, you know, very challenging. And also back in the 90s, being self-employed was I wouldn't say it's relatively new because people have always been self-employed, right? But most people would prefer to be an employee. So it was quite a difficult step to shun a salary and secure employment to go and do something where really I was responsible for everything I earned for myself and for my family.
Fearless. And I think what you're saying about your mother, you know, shows where you got that determination and that confidence from.
Definitely. I mean, I had 2 very incredible grandmothers as well, who were very, very strong. So I think I say to my daughter that we're from this line of really strong, powerful, courageous women. I think as a mother of a daughter, I think it's really important that you are that role model. I mean, you know, for all of your children, but you can certainly sort of lead by example with regards to helping your daughters feel empowered about themselves and about their journey.
Absolutely, instilling that in them from an early age, I think is crucial, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So thinking about financial planning, I mean, I have to admit that it's something that I don't think is a strength in me, that I don't feel I'm very good at, but since inviting you on this talk, and the more I've thought about it, the more I realise how crucial it is for women to feel confident and able to be in control and make decisions for themselves, but their families as well. At what point did you realise that women were very disempowered when it came to finances, and how did that manifest itself to you, or how does it now?
Well, I mean, very, very early in my career, I was asked to go and visit a lady who had needed some financial advice. She was in her 60s and her partner had died. And she was unaware that because they weren't married, she was left in a very financially disadvantaged position. I mean, to the extent that his children came and threw her out of the home she lived in with him. So she was homeless. And I was sort of a real, rookie advisor then. And I was absolutely appalled that someone could find themselves in that situation because they hadn't really understood what their position was going to be. And that kind of was the start of the journey, actually. And I've encountered so many women along in my career who've maybe got divorced, who are maybe not married and don't understand what that will mean if something happens to that relationship. Almost 1 in 2 marriages, Juliet, end in divorce now. So a lot of people find themselves in circumstances that make them financially very vulnerable. And I think about 2 or 3 years ago, and this is across the board. I mean, I advise some very successful women, and when I'm in meetings with them, with their partners, they are completely mute. The man is making the decisions, he's driving the conversation. And I've really noticed it during lockdown, because in a Zoom meeting, has a different sort of atmosphere to a face-to-face meeting. The couple will be sitting side by side, and the man is doing all the talking and the woman's just sort of nodding complicitly at the side. So I think I just felt that I needed a call to action, really, for women to really understand, what their circumstances were and would be if they had a problem, if they became ill or something happened to their partner, if they lost their job, and to encourage them that it's not something that they can't do something about. Women are very cautious around money, actually. There's a lot of things that stack against women in terms of being financially okay. We live longer, we have career breaks often, we do lower paid jobs than our partners. All of these factors kind of work against us, actually. But there are lots of things that we can do. And the starting point is understanding where you're at, and simple things actually that you can do that will make a huge difference.
Why do you think it is that women do have so many sort of fears and anxieties around or shy away from financial matters?
Well, it's really interesting because I'm very interested in mindset coaching. And one of the things that we realize is that a lot of our beliefs are established when we're quite young. And our attitudes around money, as you know, my mum was a career woman. She had her own money. In fact, she actually manages the money in our home. So I had a role model who helped me feel that it was okay to be in control of my money. And my parents saved a lot of money. They always stressed on us the importance of making sure that you were going to be okay if something went wrong. So I think for a lot of women, if you don't have that early sort of role model or that upbringing, or maybe you're told it's the man's job to sort the money out, then that kind of carries through with you into later life. So, you feel it's not your job, or you don't feel, empowered enough to understand. People think that financial planning is very complicated. It's difficult. And it's up to us to try and explain to people that, with the right help and advice, it's imperative that you understand, your finances. And it's not as difficult as people think, actually.
And what impact have you seen, or does this sort of, I don't know if financial naivety is the right word, but what impact can that have on women's lives? What knock-on effects are there?
Well, I think, if you're living blissfully unaware about what your outcome might be, for example, if you're cohabiting with a partner, I'm talking about UK law now. Obviously, I know this is going to go out around the world, but if you live with somebody and you're not legally married to them, your situation is much different if something happens to that relationship. So, in a really detrimental way. If you don't have a will and your partner dies, or something happens to both of you, and you haven't made provision for your children, there can be implications there. I think, we've obviously been through, across the world, we've been through this terrible pandemic. And, one of the things I hope it's made people think about is, how much do I understand my personal financial situation. I was talking to someone last week, and I asked the question, how long will you get paid by your employer if you're ill? And she said, I have no idea. I just don't know. So there are simple things that you can do to improve your understanding and to make it seem less challenging. Because I think people think it's so big and it's so scary. And you know, I was talking to a young girl last week, and she said, well, there's no point saving for a pension, you know, because if I die before I get there, it'll just be wasted money. You know, it's the misconceptions that people have. And in my experience, if you embrace the understanding of your own financial situation, you are more likely to have a better outcome, you know, you than someone who doesn't. Someone who puts their head in the sand and hopes it'll be okay. Generally.
Yeah. So I guess it's overcoming the fear of it, learning to understand it, and then being able to take control of it. And what would you say the most important areas that women, you know, need to take control of? What would be the first things?
Well, I think number one, I mean, I've been talking a lot about this during lockdown for everybody actually, is understand look at what you're spending. You know, there's been lots of talk around people saving money because they're not buying lots of new dresses or, you know, going on holidays. So a good starting point is look at what you're spending and look if there's anything you can manage better, you know, changing your utility provider, or maybe not going for one of those expensive coffees every day, or looking at your internet provider. So understanding what's coming in and what you're spending, and whether there's anything you could do to make some improvements that would enable you to save some money. You know, in every situation, having money in the bank is really quite important. That kind of, we call it our rainy day money or our emergency money. So trying to make sure that you've built up some cash in the bank that's going to tide you over, you know, should the unforeseen happen. And then I think making sure that if you're unable to work, depending on your employment, I mean, obviously, if you're employed by a large organization, this may be all provided for you. But, you know, more and more women now are self-employed. You know, more females. I mean, more businesses have been set up during lockdown by women. So women are very entrepreneurial, but they often do work for themselves. So making sure that if you become ill or something happens, that you're going to be okay, that there's some provision there to tide you over until such time as you're back on your feet. I
think, like we said before, sometimes it is fear and not really knowing how to go about it. Have you got any sort of strategies that women can use to help them feel more confident about it?
Well, I mean, obviously, I talked about some mindset coaching. So there's a lot of that around which will help people. I think a good starting point is finding somebody that you can trust, that you feel you are able to have an open conversation with. Whether that's by yourself or with your partner. But I think finding a good relationship with somebody is a good starting point. You know, we live in a world now where people think that all they need to do is go online and they can find the answers to everything. But there's nothing better than a face-to-face connection with somebody who can, because what you're doing there is you're actually trying to assess your own situation with the lack of knowledge. If you find somebody, you know, that you can talk to, who can just have an overview of everything and just come up with one or two ideas based on their own experience, I think that's a really, really good starting point.
Yeah, definitely. That makes sense to me. Finding someone you trust. Is there any ways that you can go about doing that? Just ask for recommendations from other people, or is there anywhere specific that would be good to go?
I mean, you could go online and use various search engines. I always think that recommendation is good. I mean, there are all sorts of things that you can do. There's in the UK something called Vouched For that you can go on, and it will tell you the financial advisors in your area. But usually, you know, it's good to ask someone else, you know, who they use and are they happy with them, or, you know, and get a really good recommendation like that. So I think that's a really good starting point, actually.
So you mentioned there about, women starting up lots of businesses in lockdown and through this pandemic time. So at 261 Fearless, we help women to start and run their own non-profit businesses. So from your experience, what can women gain from doing that, from learning about financial matters, whether it be starting their own business or sorting out their own financial affairs? What have we got to gain from it?
I mean, you've got so much to gain from it. I work with a lot of women who have set up their own businesses. And what's really inspired me during lockdown is how versatile women are at thinking outside the box. Where they're masters of their own destiny. They can be flexible in their thinking. They've taken their businesses, some of the people I work with, sort of from face-to-face to, online. Women are very adaptable and very flexible. And I think being able to determine your own path is something, for myself, that has been truly empowering. I remember, Juliet, right at the start of my career, I was having lunch with a lawyer. I remember thinking, gosh, am I doing the right thing? Because she was on a really lovely salary and she had all the lovely benefits that went with that. And there was me, sort of starting every month with a blank piece of paper. And if I went on holiday, I wasn't getting paid. And it was really daunting. But if you feel empowered and you have great clarity and ambition and desire, to me, there can be nothing better than being master of your own future financially, but also in terms of what you achieve, what you decide to do with that.
That's very inspiring, definitely. Yeah. Well, hopefully through 261 Fearless, we're helping women to do that. And I know that you're working as well to help empower women. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you're doing in that arena?
Yeah, so I set up She Can Prosper. Ironically, it launched just as lockdown happened, actually. And it came out of lots of thinking around, we need to get women more actively engaged with their own financial well-being. So it's a non-profit organisation. We have an Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn page. We're posting lots of amazing content. We've been delighted that people have contacted us and connected with us who've got stories to share. I think Fearless 261 will be a great story to have on our website. And we've had mindset coaches talking about empowerment, people talking about mindset coaching, just amazing things, just to try and help and encourage and support women to feel more empowered, to really take the bull by the horns and think about, what do I need to do to make sure that I'm going to be okay and that I'm not going to be. We've had something called My Story, where people talk about things that have happened to them that are unexpected, and how they've coped with that. So we're hoping that the content that we share with our connections will be things that are useful to them. We've obviously done quite a lot in lockdown about, now that you're used to having your own coffee, don't go out and buy a coffee. All these things add up. Small changes that we can all make that can make a difference. And we're delighted with how it's gone so far, and we've got some really, really great plans for next year to really encourage women to get on board with us and benefit from what we hope it can offer them.
Oh, it sounds fantastic and very much needed from what I've learned during this conversation. So that's brilliant. Thank you for sharing it. Well, it's been wonderful, Diane, to hear that and to hear your own success, but also how you're then passing that forward to other women. And I'm sure there's a lot of people listening who are now, including me, who are thinking, oh, perhaps I need to go and have a look at the ins and outs of my bank account and what's going on. So it's been really motivating, really inspiring. Thank you very, very much for joining us.
Thank you too. Thank you, Juliet.
Thank you everyone for listening to this 261 Fearless Empowerment Talk. We'll be back soon with another one. In the meantime, please just be fearless.